Alright, back at it again. Welcome to the channel. It's Ninja Chortle. We have our custom made Faye Valentine with Cowboy Bebop. Inspired at the very least. Some differences, some things that I wish I had did differently, some things that I had to do differently to get this done, but I'm still happy how she turned out. And of course, she doesn't have a jacket. I wish so badly she could have had a jacket, but that's all right. I mean, there are ways that you could do a jacket if you really wanted to have it, but for what it's worth, we skipped the jacket. So we'll go over that shortly. We're gonna go from the bottom to the top on everything. So one thing about Faye Valentine is that she has, at least in the show, she has like really short heels that are all white with like some socks or whatever, and that's what we got here. And these are actually going to be the same ones that are on this Agent Carter, Peggy Carter from the first, I don't know, was this if I remember correctly, first 10 figure? Marvel Studios first 10, whatever it was, that wave was called, or that run of figures was called. I believe so. But yeah, these are the exact same shoes. Because I had made that 02, I think I covered it before. I used 02 using this body from Peggy, and I didn't need those shoes for 02. I still had them, so yeah, here they are. They're on this Faye Valentine. They're pretty much the exact same style of shoe, so just was able to repaint that. And another thing that I actually took from this Peggy Carter is her left hand. So it's like a weapon holding hand, or maybe say a relaxed hand. So it's not a fist, it's not an open hand. It's actually the same left hand here on my Faye Valentine, but painted a different flesh tone and so on. But it is that hand. So I don't think there's anything else I took from this Peggy, although it is worth noting that she does have a right hand that is flesh tone and a gun trigger hand. So there aren't that many other Marvel Legends characters, female, that have flesh tone gun trigger hands. In fact, I would be as bold as to say is Peggy's the only one. She's at least the only one that I've encountered in making all of these customs. And I had already used my right hand from that other Peggy, the extra one that I got. I used it on Misato. So I didn't have any extra right hands or gun trigger hands that were flesh. But I had to have something for Faye. So this right hand is actually a bodysuit hand, which was sanded down quite greatly, and it came from the Deadly Origins Black Widow, because Black Widow's dang near one of the only female characters that actually uses guns and has a Marvel Legend. There's a couple more, but for the most part she's the most readily available and prevalent one. So it is from that, but it was sanded down. And like I said, if you had a Peggy, extra Peggy, you actually have regular hands, but she might be the only one. That being said, let's go back to the rest of the figure. I just thought I'd cover that right away since it was already on topic. As far as the socks go, or whatever this called, these bumps there, that's this from the Blink figure. So we got Blink here. That is just repainted white. So it just goes right on there. And the rest of the legs are actually from it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're just Kate Bishop legs, but these ones in particular did come from this fodder dagger, so it was already white. And I use those because, it's white at the bottom. So I didn't actually paint any of that underneath this little sock thing. So that's all just the original white plastic. And that helps with paint rub, so you don't have to paint You don't have to worry about the pins needing to be painted because they're already white, and then the immediate area there is already white, so it's just white plastic. And I just had to paint the shoes, and I don't really have to worry about the paint rub there because, you know, it's really just plastic rubbing up against it, and it's not really much of a rub to begin with. So that's why I use these legs, these lower legs, and the knees as well. So those did get sanded, the knees, because all of that paint on the inside is all pink. The pins are painted pink, and so on. And there is no paint rub there, happy to report. I was able to avoid all of that. And as far as the thighs go, there are the thighs specifically from a, well, it could be a Jean Grey, it could be a Moira, or a I believe honestly it's a Gwen Stacy. And one thing that I don't have to mention, maybe you can see it, maybe you can't, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. These thighs, I am about 95% sure that Hasbro mixed them up on the Gwen Stacy figure that I pulled them from. I'm pretty sure, because you can kind of see it here. You can see how that goes in like that, just like you can see that inward groove. That's the way it's supposed to look on the right side, which this is her right leg. It's supposed to look the same way but flipped on the opposite side on the left leg, but it doesn't, because they gave me two of the same leg on one figure. I don't know, and it's also labeled weird. So when you're looking at the figures, pieces and stuff, left legs and right arms and left arms and so on, they usually have like an L or an R on there, an indicator, so you know L is the left and R is right, so you don't get them mixed up. On these, it's specifically the hips. The thighs are fine. The thighs, those are the way they're supposed to be. And another way to tell that is the pin system. The pins on legs and on arms, for what it's worth, you can see how small that is. This is a small pin, but on the inside it's a big pin. That's how they do it. The bigger pins always go on the inside of a figure, and that's male, female, leg, arm, it doesn't matter. The pins are always bigger on the inside and smaller on the outside. So they gave me good pins, and they gave me good thighs. So one's the left and one's the right, so those are accurate. But then the hips are not, and I didn't separate the hips from the thighs. I didn't get them mixed up or anything like that. But Hasbro, for whatever reason, they gave me two right hips, but they actually marked L on the inside. So that's what's really weird. They actually have L's as their indicator, but then they're actually two right sides. So this little groove there is actually on the back side of this left leg. You can kind of see it on the inside there. Yeah. So you see it right there. It's two right hips, but they're actually labeled as left hips. I don't know, but that's what happened. Either way, that's that. Back to what was going on here. This is also a Blink torso, so let's get her up here, I guess. Yeah, the torso is the same. The lower torso is the same as this Blink, and I believe, if I remember correctly, 5'6" is the height for Faye Valentine. So 5'6" is actually kind of the height for this Blink, to be honest with you, but the difference being that Blink has flats and Faye has on the heels, so she should be just a little bit taller. The legs, though, are a lot different in comparison. These are really big legs, so I wouldn't use these. Faye's pretty skinny and small, but this torso works well for keeping her at that height as well as keeping her slim, although admittedly it does look a little awkward because of all of this like the gappage in here and the way her hips work with these. Like in this instance, this hip part is a lot thicker and bigger and wider. It fills that space right? It doesn't fill that space here because these hips are way thinner, and then they don't spread out more, right? They're not as curvy. So one thing, if you don't like the way this looks, and I totally get it, you could crack this open if you're going to use the same legs, of course. Like, again, these are big legs. I wouldn't use this for Faye, but if you want some slimmer legs like this, you can either crack this torso open, use these same legs, crack it open, and switch the pin in there for a wider one, because the pins on these blinks are actually very short, and that's why these hips sink in the way they do. Compare that to a Kate Bishop torso like this. The pin on there is a lot wider than this, a lot longer. So if you use these same legs, it'll stick out more. So that's one thing. However, I don't really do that. At least I'm trying not to. So I'm fine with the way this looks, but I don't do that unless I truly have to, which basically is only when I'm doing using the Moonstone body mold or using like the X23. Those are necessary for the most part. But using these, I don't want to do that. I'm fine with her being slim because she's supposed to be slim anyway, and the way the hips look, I'm totally fine with that. But if you want a super curvy version of Faye, then you might want to use a Kate Bishop body mold that has a lot more going on back there. Maybe I should use one that's not black so you can actually see it. There's a lot curvier, and then like I said, the hips would stick out a lot more and make her look a lot curvier than this. But if you just switch that lower torso with this one, she would be much taller. So and then kept everything else the same, she would end up being taller. So maybe at that point also using this top on Blink with this torso would give you the same height as this Blink. I'm saying all of that because the target is 5'6", and I do think she scales that way, and you could build her differently. But this top is a Dazzler top, and that is a very, very, very close to, but not exactly, of course, definitely not exact, but close to, I'm not going to get her to stand, but you can see it, it's a Dazzler. It's very close to how Faye's top looks. And what stinks is I actually didn't notice it until I was painting Faye, that there's actually a little bit more of her jacket that comes down. So kind of like triangles that I could have added some plastic there to extend this jacket and make it a little bit longer over her stomach. I didn't even notice it until I was painting, so it was already too late. But it's definitely something I wish I noticed before, and I would have done if I did, and it would have made her jacket look a little bit longer and big, or I should say top. This isn't her jacket. But speaking of her jacket, since we're already on that subject, so I don't have a whole lot of okay, maybe we can use this here. So you could have used these jacket arms, like say from a Dazzler or a Rogue or something like that, and just had those arms on there and gone with that. You could also, if you really want that red jacket, it would be super tough, but you could like add sculpt to the arms. Don't put any sculpt in the area where her arms are going to have that articulation, if you want to keep the articulation, that is. One thing that I had considered like a year ago was, I want to do Faye and I want to do the jacket, but I can't do it with articulation. These are action figures. They have to have movement. They have to be able to bend their arms. They have to be able to bend down, etc. But what if I filled in epoxy sculpt in all of this area, so that way it would harden and it would just be a statue? So I'd be using Marvel Legends figures, but creating them and turning them into statues instead of keeping them as action figures. And that way you could do a jacket and then get some plastic to just wrap around her, and then it would just be a static figure, or it would be a statue. So I did think about doing that, a year ago, but ultimately I still would prefer her to have articulation. So that's something. Anyway, back to the rest of her. You can see she's got the black painted on her lower torso there for all of that suspender stripe there. So the bottoms are epoxy sculpted on the back side only. As you see, there's a little bit of a line there, but it's only on the back side. I stopped it right about here, and then the rest of it is just painted on the front, and then this is sculpted on for these blue triangles here and here. That is sculpted on. The reason why I didn't sculpt the entire thing is because I just didn't want her torso to look bigger. You see her butt does look a little bit bigger than it normally would, which is fine, totally fine. But normally it wouldn't be that big. It's just because I sculpted the pants on in the back. But again, totally fine. All of this is painted on in the, right here on the upper torso. Everything is painted on. And that's just how the Dazzler top looks without taking anything off. So like I said, if you really, you could use this and then use the Kate Bishop torso to make her curvier. She just would be taller. And that's just your personal preference if you really wanted to do that. Now, one thing I did have to change, by the way, the gun is also from Deadly Origin Black Widow with the firing effect. So the hand and the gun come from that. The arms come from the Dazzler as well. That very same Dazzler. They're already, the same arms, just repainted. Now, her face. I actually didn't, this is like version 4.0 of her face. This is not my original intention with both using this head sculpt as well as this hair. I did the best I could. And like I said, this is about 4.0 version. I originally wanted to use a Karma, the X-Men New Mutants Karma head for Faye's face. And then I had intended on using, well, I guess it would be custom hair, because Faye's hair is very flat. It's very pointed and stylized, but it's very flat in visual appearance. This is actually the head and the hair is sorry for the focus. The head and the hair is actually a Stepford Cuckoo, the one with the short black hair. So it's actually the same hair. It's very layered, very thick. It's nice. It's just not quite exactly Faye Valentine's hair. But it is that head and that hair. And then all I did was cut off the top part, the bangs that are on that Stepford Cuckoo. Cut it off from the front, and then glued after taking the hair off, I cut that bangs off, glued it back on, and then there's this big gap on her forehead. So I took some epoxy sculpt and sculpted the headband on there. I was going to use plastic, but it was hard to get the plastic to sit on the curvature of her head without coming up while waiting for it to be glued on. So I just used epoxy sculpt so that way it'd be sculpted on, and I could shape it, and I sanded it down a little bit so that way it fits up there. And then using those same bangs that I cut off of the original hair sculpt, I cut them shorter and just cut little bits of pieces out of it, but it just cut shorter and just glued it in front of the headband, and then glued some other stray pieces of hair to be that hair that just kind of flaps in front of Faye's face. It doesn't look amazing. Don't get me wrong. It's not awful, but it's not right. It's not exact, and I totally get that. It's just kind of, this is the best I can do. I don't know if my other idea, if I had a little bit more patience, would have worked, because it was basically taking some flat plastic and just gluing it straight around her head, and it worked a little bit, but then the execution of trying to do the rest of her hair didn't work out, and I tried about 3 times, and I just was like, okay, I want to get this Faye done, so I'll just do my backup idea, and this is my backup idea. So it's okay. I'm still, it's not exactly what I wanted, but it's not so far off that it looks terrible either. I'm happy enough with it. I really love the colors of it. I love the pink. I love the yellow. I love her hair color and her skin tone. I like that a lot too. And I also love how her shoes came out. Her heels, her whatever booties, or whatever that's called. I love all of it came out. The only thing I really have issue is just her face. I just wish it was the other head. I really wanted it to be Karma, and her hair isn't exactly how I wanted it to be, but that's all right. And it's not a big deal. So that's it, though. As far as more Cowboy Bebop goes, I don't know. I really wanted to make a corgi, find a corgi and make Ein with this as well, but and I've been looking for months, like months, since probably November, I think. I've been looking for a corgi that's scaled, nothing too big, nothing too small. I was going to make Ein and Faye at the same time, and then was planning on going, oh, if I can make Ein and Faye, then I'll make Edward. And if I make Edward, then of course I'll just make everyone else. I'll make Spike, I'll make Jet Black as well, and then I can have the whole team. But if I don't find a corgi, I'm not making Ein, and if I'm not making Ein, then I'm not making Edward, and I'm not making Spike, and I'm not making Jet Black. So if you guys know where I can find a pretty decent looking toy corgi so I can make Ein, then I will continue on with Cowboy Bebop. If not, then this is it. So that's all I got to say about that. If you like more stuff like this, make sure you subscribe. I do have more customs on the way, more videos coming very soon, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.